Welcome to my full 2020/2021 NFL playoff predictions. After getting through 256 regular season games during a pandemic, the NFL playoffs are officially set, and I'm going to start 2021 off with a bang and predict how these games are going to play out each week. And you know I had to bring out all the graphics for the playoffs, so
hold on to your butts.
Also, I've done this the past 2 seasons, and it's been pretty fun to see your response to it, so we're doing it again. I'm going to give 3 Super Bowl matchups at the end of this, and I want you to use this format also in the comments. So the first choice is going to be who I or who you think will be in the Super Bowl. Number 2 will be who we want to see in the Super Bowl. And then number 3 would be who the NFL wants in the Super Bowl. This is the controversial conspiracy theory pick that y'all either love or hate. Now, if you want to see if I pick the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, then you can just use the timestamps below. But if your favorite team season is over and you're still here, then you are my kind of people. You should consider subscribing, sticking around, because I'm in the same boat, so I'm ready to start making some off-season content. Now, this is news to you, where have you been, but the playoff seeding this year is a little bit different. There's 14 teams instead of 12, and only the number 1 seed got a bye week. That means we've got 6 wild card games to watch on opening weekend, back-to-back triple headers. But speaking of the Chiefs, I'm pretty sure that you're going to run into a couple of Chiefs predictions to win it all this year, so I developed a super accurate yet super complicated formula. Don't ask about it, but it's based on the ability of each team in the NFL to upset the Chiefs at some point in the playoffs. But we're going to call this the BTC, their ability to beat the Chiefs. If you're thinking that's for Bitcoin, it's not. It's for beat the Chiefs. And my beat the Chiefs rating for each team will indicate how much I like their chances to take down Goliath this year. And then at the end of this video, I will recap week 17 of my NFL Pick'em group and announce the winner of the 2020 NFL Retweet Pick'em Challenge so they can collect their $100 NFL Shop gift card. Now, let's get super wild. Colts versus Bills. Man, it feels like they did the Bills kind of dirty with this scheduling, because here the Bills are finally playing in a home playoff game in the very first wildcard game, which is where they usually put the sort of least interesting matchup. But maybe that's less their fault and more the fault of the Colts. That's right, shots fired early here. Honestly, it's amazing that the Colts are even here in the tournament. After the start that they got off to this year, I was ready to leave them for dead. Philip Rivers looked washed. The defense hadn't hit its groove just yet, but things steadily turned around for the Colts, and everything seems to be coming together at just the right time for them. In fact, they've actually been pretty solid all year, and this is only the second time all season that they've been underdogs, with the last game being week 5 at Cleveland. Now, the Bills, they chose to play their starters in week 17 and didn't give up a playoff spot to the Dolphins, and I've got to say that this is my favorite approach to a dominant team capping off of a dominant season going into the playoffs. Momentum is so key here. Trust me, as a guy who's watched multiple number 1 seeds go soft as baby shit right before the playoffs and blow their load after a week off. So even though the Bills don't get the usual benefit of being the number 2 seed after blowing the doors off the Dolphins in what was essentially a meaningless game, I don't think that Josh Allen and company wants to stop playing. The Colts aren't the best matchup for the Bills because this defense travels and could disrupt the momentum of the Bills offense that they've been building on since their back-to-back losses against the Titans and Chiefs back in October. Other than that, they are a Hail Mary away from a perfect record. The key matchup for me is how Philip Rivers does against the athletic Bills secondary. Rivers is the wild card for the Colts offense because he can be so erratic with the ball and throw terrible interceptions, but if they can lean on Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, the Colts might be able to limit the possessions and keep this one from becoming a track meet. Ultimately, the Bills are the second best team in the league in my opinion, and stopping Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs is getting harder by the week. I think the Bills win 35-21. Then in the late afternoon slot on Saturday, we've got Rams versus Seahawks. After splitting the regular season series, the Rams and Seahawks will make it a best of 3 for a chance to move on in the playoffs. I think that we're going to find out a lot about the Seahawks in their first playoff game. I think that this is a team and coaching staff that can tend to loaf at times during the regular season, but on paper, this offense is going to be as dangerous as any team in the NFC. They're getting a Rams team that has given them problems in the past, but they're going to be without Jared Goff at 100%, if at all. John Wolford is coming off his first NFL start and could possibly have to follow that up with his first start in the NFL playoffs a week later. And I know that the joke is that Sean McVay runs a quarterback-friendly offense and that any quarterback can come in here and produce, but the football fan in me really does hope that Goff can get back for this one, and he'll gain a lot of respect if he comes back a few weeks after breaking his thumb. But whoever starts at quarterback should have a recovering Cooper Kupp back in the lineup and off of the COVID list. But Cooper Kupp is not the wide receiver I've got my eye on this one. You know it's DK Metcalf. My pick'em guys know that I am in the DK fan club, but I also greatly respect Jalen Ramsey's game and think he is going to be the kryptonite to DK Metcalf's career. DK dominated cornerbacks this year on his way to 1,300 yards, but 2 of his worst games of the season came against Ramsey. DK also seemed to hit a wall in December after lighting up the Eagles for 10 catches and 177 yards. He failed to get over the century mark for the remainder of the regular season. Running parallel with that, Russell Wilson's play has also been in decline after being an early favorite to win NFL MVP. Now he's not even in the discussion. The Seahawks offense is going to have to deal with Aaron Rodgers and the rest of this Rams defense, which has been playing really well this year, and they found great synergy with the offense and the running game. It would be a shame for them to go out with John Walford at quarterback, but even with Goff, this Rams team kind of peaked in week 11 and they've been struggling ever since. It's the QB uncertainty for me. I'm going with the Seahawks in this one. Seahawks win 34-28. Before I get to Bucks versus Washington, I want to touch on Doug Peterson. On this channel, I definitely endorse teams finding ways to tank for draft stock. But for anybody out there that's ever competed, and I'm including sports, I'm including gaming, anything that gets those competitive juices flowing for you, you know that what Doug Peterson did was Bush League, and it's a shame that he's essentially tainted his coaching career now with such a cowardly move. But it's not the Giants players that I feel sorry for. It's the players on the Eagles football team. It's the players on the Washington football team. Any of the players or coaches that have to now be associated with this game, it's embarrassing, really. And that game never should have been flexed in the first place, and that's on the NFL. But nonetheless, the Washington football team will host a home playoff game because, well, that's the rules. No, but seriously, we can all still be happy for Ron Rivera and Alex Smith, and I think that the Washington football team's defense is the best unit of all the other teams in the NFC East, whether it be offense, defense, special teams, and is the reason that they won this division. But it is hard to think of a actual home field less deserving of this, and I mean the actual venue of FedEx Field. The grass in this venue is always a shit show, especially this time of year. Luckily, there's no rain in the forecast leading up to the game, but if there's no serious injuries as a result of the playing conditions this week, it should be considered a blessing from the football gods. That's why I don't think we'll see Buccaneers wide receiver Mike Evans this week. His knee injury will be a storyline for as long as the Bucs can stay alive in the playoffs, and it's unlikely he can or should play in this wildcard game. The Bucs were as well prepared to weather a storm of wide receivers as they could be with Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown and Gronk looking younger each week, but the key matchup is going to be in the trenches with that first round defensive line against the Bucs offensive line. The best way to stop Tom Brady has always been to knock him around, get him uncomfortable. He's getting beat up by Chase Young and the fellas, and this one could be closer than we all think. I think that there's enough gas in the tank for playoff Tom Brady to make at least one appearance in the playoffs this year. That's why I'm thinking that the Buccaneers win this one 31-17. And then in the early slot on Sunday, we've got Ravens versus Titans. Aha, the rematch to the rematch. This is becoming one of my favorite unofficial rivalries in the league right now. The Ravens had a chance to redeem their playoff loss to the Titans in week 11, but got bullied by the Titans yet again. But now they're coming off of 5 straight wins, and I think that they are the scariest team in the AFC not named the Chiefs. And that's because of Lamar Jackson, obviously. But the Titans, they're the second scariest team in the AFC not named the Chiefs, and that's because of Derrick Henry, Mr. 2K. These two guys can completely take over a game, regardless of what you're doing on defense, and that's going to scare any team that has to face the winner of this game. It's actually a shame that they both have to eliminate each other first. And I mentioned how I feel like this is becoming an unofficial rivalry, and it seems like John Harbaugh is always finding himself in these out-of-division rivalries for 2 reasons. 1, he's a Harbaugh, maybe not as far down the spectrum as his brother Jim, but still a feisty guy. And then 2, he's just a really good coach who also uses the rules to his advantage in a strategic way. The coaching battle between Harbaugh and Vrabel is an intriguing one, and I think that Mike Vrabel has an opportunity to reach a pretty elite level in the NFL coach power rankings throughout these playoffs ahead of us. If for the 3rd straight time he goes on to own John Harbaugh and then his team goes and out physicals the Ravens once again, well, that's going to go a long way in building his coaching resume. My key matchup has to feature Lamar Jackson and his ability to challenge this Titans defense, most notably the Titans secondary with his downfield passing. If he's not in a rhythm early on, it's likely the blame is going to be on Greg Roman for not getting a good enough game plan prepared now for the 3rd time against this team. If he falters later on because the Titans are playing good defense, forcing him to stay in the pocket and become a downfield passer, then the fault's probably going to fall on Lamar Jackson. I really struggled with this pick because I was hoping we'd have to see the Chiefs run through both of these teams, but there's a special resilience with this Titans team, and they always seem to pull out the close ones, so I'm going to say the Titans win this one 37-34. Bears versus Saints. This is going to be the late afternoon game on Sunday and will also be broadcast on Nickelodeon. I will definitely be watching the Nickelodeon broadcast for this one because it feels like this game's going to need a unique broadcast to keep it a little bit more interesting. After all, the Bears backed all the way into the playoffs and should be the easiest out of any team remaining. That's not a shot or disrespect, just is what it is and what happens with a 7th team being allowed in. In any given season, like this one, you can have a 10+ win team not make it in the playoffs from one conference, while 7 to 9 wins can make it in for the other conference. The Bears could make it interesting, sure, but that's only if the Saints underestimate them and don't come out to dominate from the initial whistle. After all, there are a lot of veteran quarterbacks that could be moving on to greener pastures this offseason, Drew Brees including, but the Bears are the only team in the playoffs that will likely be replacing their quarterback this offseason based on performance. Maybe you include Alex Smith in there too, but he'll at least probably be on Washington's roster. I think the only way that Mitch Trubisky keeps his job beyond this season with the Bears is with a Cinderella story run through the playoffs here. But I don't think he gets past this Saints defense. I think that highly of them. However, this team really needed that number 1 seed as as much as anybody else in the league and will have a tough road ahead of them. So hopefully they can instill some confidence here with a convincing win over the Bears. And more importantly, I hope that Alvin Kamara is ready to go after getting COVID. That's a concerning situation, although I think that the Saints can manage a game without him at 100%. The key matchup in this one for me is going to be Trubisky versus the Saints defense. All eyes are on Mitch as the Bears X factor. If he can perform well, I think that the Bears keep it kind of close, but ultimately Saints win 28-20. And then the finale on Sunday night is Browns versus Steelers. Guys, the Browns, they did it. They finally made the playoffs, and now they get to head to a place where they haven't won in 18 years. That is 17 straight games they have lost at Heinz Field. Ironically, the last time the Browns were in the playoffs, it was a 36-33 loss to the Steelers in this venue back in 2003. And I know that this feeling in Pittsburgh was that the Steelers played the Browns close last week, right? So obviously Big Ben and TJ Watt are worth 2 to 3 extra points to win the game. And sure, Big Ben could feel rejuvenated after this bye week, and the running game could open up some holes against an overly opportunistic Browns defense, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. The Steelers are primed for a one-and-done performance in the playoffs due to the fact that they check all the boxes, including peaking too early in the season, struggling to establish a running game, one position in particular being plagued by injuries, their linebacker position. In week 17, the pressure was all on the Browns, and they pulled through. Their goal has just been to get the playoff monkey off their back, and they've done that. Now the pressure is off the Browns, and it's been placed firmly on the shoulders of the Steelers, who came into the season with a Super Bowl or bust mentality. I'm actually expecting the Big Ben is going to be a little bit rusty at first, maybe some butterflies because he knows it could be his final game if he's not careful, and then the Browns are going to jump out to an early lead while leaning on their running game and limiting the Steelers' offensive possessions. This early lead will force the Steelers to abandon the running game to keep pace with the Browns' offense, but Big Ben's not been one to put the team on his back this season, and that unexpected lead gives the Browns the adrenaline rush necessary to pull off one of the biggest playoff upsets of the season. A key matchup in this one is the Browns' offensive line versus the Steelers' defensive line. If the Steelers can't slow down this running game from Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they're going to have to rely too heavily on the passing game. For that, I think that the Browns will win 28-24. Okay, that's going to do it for the wildcard round, and I'll be back each week updating these picks, even though I'm sure everything will go exactly as I laid it out here. Make sure you subscribe to get on these picks next week. I'll run through these matchups up to the 3 Super Bowl scenarios, and they are reseeded correctly, I promise. I use playoffpredictors.com, and those guys don't make any mistakes. In the divisional round, we've got Titans versus Bills. Titans offense is going to be what carries them through the playoffs, I said that, and the Bills are one of the few teams that I think can keep pace with them. The Bills got their playoff experience last year and probably learned a lot about closing out games, and I think that translates to continued success here against a Titans team that's been masterful at closing out the tight games in the end. So I've got the Bills advancing there. Browns versus Chiefs. The Browns will have won their Super Bowl if they got past the Steelers. That doesn't mean that they're ready for Andy Reid coming off of a bye week. So I've got the Chiefs handling business there. In the NFC, the Seahawks and Saints are an interesting matchup, but I gotta go with the much better defense. Saints advance there. Buccaneers versus Packers. Poor old Tom Brady left the cold weather, said he'd never go back, except that's not how the playoffs work. But I would appreciate seeing Aaron Rodgers get one last shot at Tom Brady and for Rodgers to finally beat him when it mattered the most. Moving on to the conference championships, we got the Bills versus the Chiefs in the AFC. And I joked about picking the Chiefs early on, and I even asked the guys in my Week 16 live stream if I should go against what I really think will happen in favor of an alternate ending to reality. Ultimately, the alternate ending didn't seem very popular, and that's how I ended up making the BTC rating. Listen, the Chiefs are the best team in the league with one of the best coaches in the league, quarterbacked by the best player in the league. It's just one of those years. So please don't be one of those trolls that goes around complaining about the Chiefs being picked to win it all, and just admire the fact that we've got one of the truly dominant teams in NFL history right before our very eyes. I do think that the Bills, Titans, and Ravens in that order are the 3 best teams that could knock them off, but as of right now, I don't see that happening over the course of a 60-minute win or go home scenario. In the NFC, I've got Saints versus Packers. Typically, I'd say there's no way Drew Brees goes into the frozen tundra and wins a playoff game outdoors, right? But these days, the Saints can more easily turn Brees into a bus driver and rely on the defense and running game when they need to. This is a playoff winning formula that's as old as time, yet still effective. I really hope that if the Packers are hosting a NFC Championship game, we get another snowy scenario like the Titans game, with obviously the only difference being that the game isn't over after the first drive. If we get this matchup, this is definitely one of the harder games to project, and honestly, I'm going with the Saints because of their defense, and also nobody wants to see the 2 number 1 seeds make it. That's always boring, which leads us to my first scenario, what I think will happen, and that is Chiefs versus Saints. Like I said, and I've made it pretty clear from the beginning, the Chiefs are who everybody should be picking to win the Super Bowl right now. Anybody doing anything else is just reaching and trying to get your attention by being different, but I have a feeling that we're going to see a really exciting Ravens and Titans game. game, and with the history that the Chiefs have with those two teams, we could feel really excited about their opportunity to go into Kansas City and actually beat the Chiefs. But let's move on to scenario number 2. This is the scenario that I would like to see happen, or that I want to see. Remember, my team's already out, so this is just a matchup of two teams that I think could actually get it done, and that would be the best fan base in football. Bills Mafia getting rewarded for their loyalty, finally getting back to the Super Bowl, and then playing none other than their former hated division rival Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in a home Super Bowl. This one just checks all the boxes for me. Honestly, I'd be rooting for the Bills in that scenario, because Tom Brady getting another one is just greedy at this point, and even though the Buccaneers could potentially be the first team to play in a home Super Bowl, them losing would still leave that window open for the first team to win a home Super Bowl. And then at number 3, this is for my conspiracy bowl. No surprises here. The State Farm Bowl fell short last year, but I'd argue that this year it's even a more likely scenario for the two number 1 seeds to meet up in Tampa. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Label them 1, 2, 3. For my fellow draft nerds out there, this would be the draft order based on my predictions. The top 18 teams are already set. I'm going to start working on my next mock as soon as I'm done with this video here, but I just wanted to show you the rest of the order based on my predictions being correct, and let's be honest, they probably aren't. And then finally, this part is for the weekly pick'em OGs. Let's go over the scores for the week 17 pick'em group. If you're wondering where my week 17 pick'em was, the plan was to post them all on TikTok, but it took forever to get the videos structured just the way that I wanted. I ran into every obstacle possible when I tried to upload right after the old New Year's Eve celebrations. After all that, it was too late. First one flopped, so I just decided to focus my attention to formatting my playoff predictions video here so that I can get it to come out the day after the regular season. These graphics don't make themselves, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, in week 17, we had a 3-way tie with 15 picks. That's insane. That means these 3 guys only missed 1 game from the final week. I think that's the closest to a perfect week that we had all season, but it's the overall leader you guys are interested in. Well, we had a 3-way tie, and because I never planned for this, I didn't have a tiebreaker, so I removed the setting that drops your lowest week since none of these guys missed a week, and that was mainly put in place to encourage other people that had missed a week to just keep participating. And that leaves Quebec Steelers and No Name 567 tied for 3rd place with 178. David 2 ironically in 2nd place with 179, putting Mr. Niner Gang himself in 1st place with 180 games out of 256 picked correctly. Congratulations, my guy. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll DM you a code to acquire your $100 NFL Shop gift card. I personally would have finished with 166 if I hadn't forgotten to enter that 14-point week. I think it was week 2 or week 3. These guys here at the top picking are on another level. Big thanks to everybody for playing this season. I had a blast as always. Stick around for some off-season stuff, mock drafts, maybe some future daytime live streams. Good luck if you're betting on these playoff games. I hope it can be of some help to you, and I will see you all in the next video.